everybody. Still got everyone while they're still awake? That's excellent, because there's a great story coming up. I did not quite as technically brilliant as the last one with all of that verify and showing you great deposits. I can't do that. But anyway, it's a great story what we've got. For those that don't know, we've got two fantastic projects up there in Sweden. The Falun copper gold asset and the Sala zinc silver asset. These assets have got magnificent operating histories. In fact, made Sweden a superpower back in the late 1600s, financed all the wars and the like. So incredible histories, and we're pretty hopeful that they've got pretty good futures in front of them as well. It's interesting when you come to conferences like this, and I don't do a lot. You're a little bit picky about who you come to, and clearly the Reed corporate guys run a great conference. But people always ask, what do you look for? You've got so many good opportunities out there. Like, what's the key? And for me, it's actually all about leverage. It's all about what we can turn these things into at the end of the day. And I've been on board now for about a year or so now, and really these assets. The guy that we've got over there exploring these assets, the history of these assets, all add up to just a phenomenal opportunity, and I'll tell you a little bit about it as we go along. But more fundamentally, it's about, as I said, it's about the assets, it's about the people, and it's also about the jurisdiction in a way. There's no point having the greatest asset in the world if you can't do anything with it. And clearly, and I'll go into it a little bit more, but the dynamic around Europe at the moment I find really, really interesting, and we'll touch on that. But Sweden itself is an interesting place. You look at the Fraser Institute, and clearly it's a tier 1 mining jurisdiction. It's been mining for thousands of years, back to the days of the Vikings. And I've just been watching that series. The guys got me into it. It's been quite good. And it's got one of the biggest mining economies in Europe. When I first looked at it, you sort of write it off a little bit. You think of Scandinavia, it's all green. I expected to turn up to the airport and Greta Thunberg be hiding behind the baggage carousel, telling me that I wasn't welcome. But the thing that's really struck me about the Swedes, and I spent a lot of time talking to politicians and the like, and they're very pragmatic people, the Swedes. And you saw that during COVID. They attacked COVID in a totally different way to the rest of the world. And it's a little bit about, when you start talking to them about resources, and, they're at the forefront of the green transition up there. They've got big battery plants starting, they've got this H2 green steel. They are very pragmatic about how they approach the role that commodities have in that green transition, if you like. It's quite interesting. They are one of the very few economies, for example, that have stepped back from their energy targets. They wanted to be 100% renewable energy by 2040. Appreciated that they weren't going to be able to do that, that it was putting too much pressure on the people. So they're now they want to be fossil fuel free by 2040. Again, it's interesting when you. That was the other point I was going to make. It's about uranium mining. 40 years ago, they had a referendum up there, and they decided they weren't going to do any more uranium mining. Sweden's got 30 or 40% of the global, of Europe's uranium reserves, but now that is something they're having a look at. When I go up and see the politicians, it's all about how, and politicians always tell you what you want to hear. I get that, but it's all about how can we sort of facilitate what you're doing up there. So again, it's a really interesting place to be. I sort of spoke about the people. We have. This guy, Eric Lundstrom, who's our chief geologist up there, he's ex-Boliden. He's been wandering up the land up there for over 30 years. He knows those rocks better than anybody else. I always call him the secret sauce, if you like. We've got these great assets, but if you haven't got a guy driving the drill bit that absolutely knows what he's doing, then again, it's a little bit pointless. But Eric has studied and mapped this area for a long, long time, and he is the guy that if he's not one of the 5 best VMS guys on the planet, I would be very surprised. And then finally, it's all about the assets. That's where I started with the big punchline, if you like. But so, if you look at Falun has operated for over 1,000 years. It was the biggest copper producer in the Western world for hundreds of years. I mean, the copper on the roof of Versailles and numerous other palaces around Europe comes from Falun. We've now got, during its day, it produced 28 million tonnes at 4% copper. I mean, what that would be worth today would be just extraordinary. So if we get a sniff of 4% copper when we're doing the exploration, and we've just started drilling there again after quite a lot of work, this thing again is, when I talk about leverage, this thing will be worth a fortune. And again, Sala, we shouldn't forget, like we're a two project company. Sala was one of the largest and highest grade silver producers in Europe. It produced 200 million ounces at over 1,200 grams a tonne. I mean, that's mind blowing in today's parlance when you sort of look at some of the silver producers around the world. We've now got a 10 million tonne deposit there, and some pretty interesting exploration still to come. Just to know, it's always good to touch something. This is why I wish I had a video that I could show you all. But on the left there is that's our drilling there at Sala, and on the right there is the old pit at Falun. You can just sort of see. Oh shit! Hit the right button there. But there's the portal down there. Again, it goes down about 500 metres, and it's actually quite a small footprint, Falun. It's only 100 by 200 by about 500 metres deep, which again is really interesting when you look at some of the other big projects around there, which are down at 1,500 metres now. It's a really exciting opportunity for us. I won't spend too much time on that. I always find it a bit depressing when you've got assets like this and you're capitalised at $30 million, but it's probably my fault because I need to do some more marketing. But I tell you, you can do this all day. In terms of Sweden itself, I did talk a little bit about that European macro. Again, Europe consumes 25% of the world's commodities. It produces 3 or 4%. You then add on what's going on in the Ukraine at the moment, and with Russia sort of getting pushed a little bit out to the side, it's all, there's a lot of pressure on the member states in terms of upping production, and it was quite interesting. So Sweden was the chairman of the EU when they brought in that Critical Minerals Act. And about sort of needing to produce more materials in country, or within the EU, in terms of addressing that vulnerability. So, as I say, it's when I sort of talk, when you're talking to politicians, actually, it is all about how do we facilitate more production of commodities in Europe. So I always tell people it's a lot about right time, right place in Europe at the moment, and Sweden is one of the most prospective places in Europe. I always like, again, putting this map up, because when I first came on board again, yes, Sweden got all these ticks, if you like, in terms of, being a number one, a tier one jurisdiction for mining. There was issues with respect to, the only issue I could find is the approvals process. And that was quite interesting when I sort of dug into it a little bit further, because when you look at Sweden, up here, it is tough. Up there you have the Sami people, you have the reindeer herding. You would have heard about the Sami parliaments and things when we were looking at the Voice here in Australia. That's a tough place. It's very culturally sensitive up there, and it is hard to get your approvals if you're operating in the north of Sweden. We're down here. We're an hour out of Stockholm. This is an area, this Bergslagen region has been mining. This is where they've been mining for over 1,000 years. You've got this Garpenberg mine here, which is Boliden's very big zinc, silver, lead mine. You've got Zinkgruvan down here, which again the same, run by Lundin. These are big VMS deposits. This is an area that's globally recognised for its VMS deposits. And Garpenberg actually bisects where we are at Falun and where we are at Sala. So it's a fantastic place for us to be operating. Falun itself, this is the area that I mentioned where Eric's been sort of spending all his time. He and his dog are always out there wandering and looking at outcrops and all that sort of stuff that geologists love to do. But, it was quite interesting. So all these red markings that you can see here are effectively the ore horizon that Eric has been mapping. When we first started here, this is Whitgruven. This is where we put our first hole. We hit 43 metres of sulphide, and then we found we then do our downhole EM, and then we sort of found this off-hole conductor, which is absolutely the perfect strategy or the perfect theory in terms of how it works up there. We are in a VMS system, so you see a lot of zinc, lead, silver, but what we're looking for are these elevated copper-gold structures, which is another Falun, if you like. So the idea is you put your drill hole down, you do your downhole EM, and hopefully an off-hole conductor lights up, and then hopefully that is what you're looking for here. And so when we did Whitgrooven, and I'll show you a bit on the next slide, that's exactly what happened. So we got really excited about that. So excited that we then went. We didn't actually own the permit on which which Falun currently exists on. So we went and bought that. We bought it for a couple of $100,000 from some geologists who really couldn't afford to keep the permit. And I still think that'll be the buy of the century. So we'll hold that thought, but we'll see where that ultimately ends up. And then what we've been doing for about the last 6 months or so, when we moved away from what we were doing at Sala in May, and then what we've been doing since that time is doing all our geophysics, if you like, all of our EM. And what we've now been able to do is basically identify that Falun and what we were doing at Whitgrooven is all part of the same ore trend. We've got all of these gravity anomalies that sit on that 3.5 kilometre trend, and there's not been a drill hole put in it. That's the really exciting thing for me. Not one drill hole exists along this trend here. What we also found was that, or what we'd also like to see is that potentially Falun continues to extend there to the south, continues to dip down. And we believe, Eric is telling me that the ore body comes to surface back around here as well. So we've had some really interesting signatures around there. And so we started drilling again at the start of October. And we're now just going to work through a lot of these targets. So it's taken us a little bit of time to put all that together. People always give me a hard time, like it's small resource land. They like to see an announcement every 2 weeks. I've let them all down. They all hate me. The share price goes the wrong way. But we've done the hard work, and we're now going to see what the drill bit delivers. This was this hole I was talking to you about, Whitgrooven. There's our first hole there. You know, there's the old Whitgrooven mine, goes down about 280 metres. We intersected here at about probably the 300 metre level, got some really nice intersections. But as I say, that's not really what we're looking for. We do the downhole EM and there's the off-hole conductor. So I said to Eric, there's your target, let's go, let's hit that. He missed, which was very disappointing. But what was really interesting is that we hit this 8 metres of copper stringer zone, which we know sits in the footwall of Falun. So this is a key target for us. All the geology is shaping up exactly like it looks at Falun. So yeah, we can't wait to get back. Hopefully this is one of the next upcoming holes. I'll run through these very quickly, but when we bought Falun, we got a 1,400-hole database. It's quite interesting in Sweden. You know, back before the early 90s, you didn't have to report anything. So our geos spend half the time locating old core at core sheds all over Sweden. You spend half your time doing your geophysics and half your time in the car going and collecting all of this core that we can reevaluate. But what was really interesting for me is we started to identify some really big structures. So if you look at, this is Falun here, there's your 28 million tonnes at 4% copper. And you start to look at this very big copper gold structure that sits along the side here, this potential western extension out here, and also underneath the old Falun mine. I mean, when you start to look at some of the intersections, you're looking at 50 metres at 3.5 grams per tonne gold, you're 7 metres at 7% copper. I mean, these are really exciting things. And as I said, that 7 metres at 7% copper is down just underneath the old mine. And as I've mentioned to you, you look at Garpenberg and you look at St. Grooven, these things are down at 1,500 metres now. So no surprises that at 500 metres, you're still seeing this very strong copper signatures. So yeah, really interesting. Again, another picture of that. Sorry, I'm just watching the time. I'll get into trouble shortly. This is just a picture of us drilling. I thought I'd give everybody a bit of a look at how it's done. I mean, I only put up the ones in summer because it looks bloody cold and miserable in winter. But, they have these little sort of cabins on top of the drills and they tell me that keeps them warm. But, I tell you, there's no way I'm spending all day sitting in one of those things. It looks freezing. Yeah, and look, I've just got a couple of minutes left, but I'd like to give you just a quick look at Sala. As I said, we've moved up to Falun and we're really spending a lot of our time there at the moment. But this again is really interesting. So as I mentioned to you before, here we go. There's Sala. So there's your 200 million ounces of silver at over 1,200 grams a tonne. This is our current resource. What we believe is this resource comes up here towards the north. And it's really interesting. So, you know, as this is where you are into zinc, lead, silver, but there's a lot of high-grade silver still sitting around. So when you start to look at some of these silver potential repeats of the Sala ore body, you know, you're talking, you know, over 1,000 grams per tonne silver, which again is just mind-blowing if that all starts to come together. So in my mind, there's no doubt there's a mine here. We went to Falun because people get more excited about the copper gold, if you like. But I've got no doubt there's some more really interesting work that 10 million tonnes will turn into something significantly more than that in due course. You know, really all that holds us up a little bit here is just the size of our balance sheet. This I found interesting, and I just sort of throw it in just to give you a bit of a feel for scope and scale. And so Eric, as I mentioned, is ex-Boliden. This is the old Garpenberg mine. So this was the open pit and the underground, and it was all about to close. And Eric put a 2-kilometre drill hole along here and didn't hit any mineralisation, but identified, because the sphaler, it's a little bit hard to see from surface, but he identified all of these structures that sat below. And so this is one of his big discoveries. So he discovered over 200 million tonnes. And when you look at Boliden at the moment, and they're doing it a bit tough with Tara on care and maintenance, and their smelter just had a fire in the northern part of Sweden, this is their key mine at the moment. And you look at what we are, you know, to my mind, it sort of fits neatly into that. But it's all the same geology. So, you know, the opportunity that we have there, I think, is a really interesting one. So that's pretty much it from me. I think a couple of key things that I'd leave you with. Sweden, I absolutely believe right time, right place. You know, we've got some really, really interesting assets. They've got unbelievable operating histories, and you know, we only need a little bit of that, I think, to turn this company into something really special. You know, we're now drilling. You know, hopefully results are around the corner there, and you know, I absolutely believe we've got the best guys in the world, basically, that is driving those drill bits that'll hopefully lead to success here. So, thank you very much for your time, and enjoy your conference. And if you want to have a chat, I'm just out there. Thank you very much.